The Wolves of Willoughby Chase by Joan Aiken. Chapter 7. The door was opened by a thin, dirty child in a brown pinafore, with one white front pocket on which was stitched a large number 6. Bonnie and Sylvia were not certain if the child was a boy or a girl until Miss Slycarp said, "It's you, is it, Lucy? Where is Mrs. Brisket?"
"In here, please, miss,"
Lucy said with a frightened gasp. She opened a door on one side of the entrance hall. Miss Slycarp swept through, turning her head to say to Bonnie and Sylvia, "Wait there! Don't speak or fidget." Then they heard her voice beyond the door. "Gertrude, it is I. Our plans are going excellently." Somebody shut the door, and they could hear nothing further. The little girl, Lucy, regarded the new arrivals for a moment, her finger in her mouth, before picking up a broom several inches taller than herself and beginning to sweep the floor. "Are you a pupil here?" Bonnie asked her curiously. The brown pinafore looked like some kind of uniform, but why was her hair cut so short, even shorter than a boy's? And why was she doing housework? "Hush!" whispered Lucy, her eyes filled in terror. Her eyes flicked in terror toward the closed door.
"She'll half kill me if she hears me speak."
"Who?" breathed Bonnie.
"Her! Mrs. Brisket."
Bonnie looked as if she was on the point of asking more questions, but Sylvia hushed her, not wishing to get Lucy into trouble, and Lucy herself resolutely turned her back and went on with her work, stirring up a cloud of dust in the dim and stuffy hall. Suddenly Sylvia had the feeling that they were being watched. She raised her eyes and saw someone standing by the banister rail at the top of the ill-lit stairs, staring down at them. Meeting Sylvia's eyes, this person slowly descended toward them. She was a girl of about 15, tall and thin, with a pale, handsome, sharp-featured face. She walked with a slouch and was very richly dressed in velvet. With a band of fur around her jacket and several bracelets, she carried a pair of silver skates. She walked up to Bonnie and Sylvia, surveying them coolly and insolently. She made no remark or friendly gesture of greeting, merely looked them up and down, and then, with a sudden quick movement, tugged off Sylvia's white fur cap and tried it on herself. It was too small.
She said coldly. "What a nuisance! You're not bigger."
She dropped the cap disdainfully on the floor. Sylvia's lips parted in indignation. Even she, mild and good-tempered as she was, would have protested had she not noticed Lucy's face behind the girl's elbow, grimacing at her in an agony of alarm, evidently warning her not to object to this treatment. Wordlessly, she picked up the beautiful white cap, its fur dusty from the heap of sweepings on which it had fallen, and stood, stroking it, while the girl said carelessly to Lucy, "Is my mother in there?"
"Yes, Miss Diana, talking to Miss Slycarp."
"Oh, that old harridan!" She pushed open the door, and they heard her say, "Ma, I'm going out. There's a fair and all-night skating on the river. Give me 5 guineas." She reappeared in the doorway, jiggling coins in her hand, turned her head to say, "If either of the new girls is good at mending, make her sew up my satin petticoat. It's split." Then she pushed haughtily past them and went out, slamming the front door. Miss Slycarp summoned Bonnie and Sylvia to be inspected by their new instructress. As soon as they saw her, they recognized the lady whom they had seen driving her carriage near the boundaries of Willoughby Chase. She was a tall, massive, smartly dressed woman, her big-knuckled hands with rings flashing red and yellow, rubies and topazes. She glanced at the children irritably. Her eyes were yellow as the stones in her rings, yellow as the eyes of a tiger, and she looked as if she could be bad-tempered. "These are the children, Gertrude," Miss Slycarp said. "That one," she said, pointing to Sylvia, "is tractable enough, though lazy and whining and disposed to malinger. This one," indicating Bonnie, "is thoroughly insolent and ungovernable, and will need constant checking and keeping down."
"I'm not! She's not!" burst from Bonnie and Sylvia simultaneously,
but Mrs. Brisket checked them with a glare of her yellow eyes.
"Speak before you are spoken to in this house, young ladies, and you'll get a touch of the strop and lose your supper, so let's have no more of it."
They were silent, but Bonnie's eyes flashed dangerously. "Both, as you can see," continued Miss Slycarp, as if there had been no interruption, "have been grossly spoiled and overindulged."
They'll soon have that nonsense knocked out of them here, said Mrs. Brisket.
Miss Slycarp rose. "I am leaving them in good hands, Gertrude," she said. "I am very busy just at present, as you know, but when next we meet I hope you will be coming to visit me. You have helped me in the past, Gertrude, and soon I shall be in a position to help you." She said this last very significantly. Bonnie and Sylvia's eyes met. Was Miss Slycarp intending to take complete possession of Willoughby Chase? Sylvia felt something like despair come over her, but Bonnie clenched her hands indomitably. Mrs. Brisket ushered Miss Slycarp out and saw her to the carriage. When it had gone, with a clattering of hooves and a flashing of lamps, she returned to the children.
"We have no names here," she said sternly. "You," to Sylvia, "will be number 98. You, number 99. Come, make haste. The others are in bed long ago, except for the night workers."
She led them through the hall, where the little girl Lucy swept frenziedly as soon as Mrs. Brisket appeared, though it was plain she was dropping with sleepiness, and up flight after flight of steep, uncarpeted stairs. On the 4th floor she pushed Bonnie through a doorway, hissing, "The bed near the door," and raised the candle she carried long enough to show a large, bare room crammed with small iron cots, on which children lay sleeping, sometimes two to a cot. One bed, by the door, was still vacant. Sylvia had just time to whisper, "Good night," before she was hustled up to the floor above and thrust into a similar bedroom. She undressed in the pitch dark and fumbled her way into the bed, which was narrow, hard, and inadequately covered. "I'll never get to sleep," she thought, as she lay shivering miserably, trying to summon up courage to thrust her feet into the chilly depths of the bed. She could hear the mill hooters wail, the iron wheels clang on the cobbles. Somewhere a church clock struck midnight. The whole of her short stay among the riches and splendors of Willoughby Chase seemed like a dream. "Oh, how I wish I was still with Aunt Jane," she thought unhappily. "But then I should not have met Bonnie, dear Bonnie." She turned over, hugging the too thin, too narrow blanket round her. Suddenly a hand touched her cheek and a voice whispered, "Sylvia, is that you?" "Bonnie!" "I had to come and make sure you were all right." Sylvia thought remorsefully how selfish she had been, lying and pitying herself while Bonnie had courageously dared the perils of the dark house to come and see her. "Yes, I'm all right, quite all right," she whispered. She reached out and hugged Bonnie. "Run back to bed quickly. Someone may catch you." She felt sure that in this place the punishment for getting out of bed would be dire. "Just came to make sure," said Bonnie. "Don't worry, Sylvia. We'll keep each other company. It won't be long. And if we don't like it, then we'll run away." Though she had said this so stoutly, her heart sank. Where could they run to with Miss Slycarp in occupation at Willoughby Chase? "See you in the morning. See you in the morning." With the memory of Bonnie's comforting presence, Sylvia at last found the courage to push her feet down to the cold bottom of the bed and go to sleep. But Bonnie lay awake for hour after hour, hearing the city clocks strike, and the wail of the factory hooters, and the rumble of the wheels. "What shall we do?" she thought again and again. "What shall we do?" In the morning they discovered why the beds near the door were the last to be occupied, while the sky outside was still black as midnight, and the frosty stars still shone. A tall girl thrust a great bell through the door and clanged it deafeningly up and down until every shivering inmate of the room had thrown back her covers, jumped to the floor, and begun dressing. Dazed and startled, Sylvia nearly fell out of bed. "Where do we wash?" she whispered to the girl in the next bed. "Hush, you mustn't speak," the girl said and pointed. Sylvia saw a tin basin in one corner of the room with a bucket beneath it. The biggest girl in the room broke the ice in the basin by giving it a sharp crack with her hairbrush. Then they all washed in order of size. Sylvia was last. When it came to her turn, there was no more than a trickle of dirty icy water left in the basement. She could not bring herself to touch it. She was about to start plaiting her hair when the big girl who had washed first said, "Wait, you! Julia, fetch the shears." "Oh, yes, Alice," said the child who had told Sylvia not to talk, ran from the room, and came back in a moment with an enormous pair of garden shears. Before Sylvia realized what was to happen, or had time to protest, Alice had seized hold of her pretty fair plaits and lopped them off one after the other. Then she chopped the remainder of Sylvia's hair off as short as possible, leaving it in a ragged, uneven fringe around her head. There was no mirror in the room, so Sylvia could not see how bad it looked. "What do you mean by cutting off my hair?" she gasped. "Hush. It's the rule. Mrs. Brisket doesn't allow long hair. Now get into line." The other crop-haired, overalled children were in line already. Alice pushed Sylvia into place at the back, took up her own position at the front, and led them downstairs. Sylvia caught a glimpse of Bonnie at the end of another line which joined theirs. Bonnie's hair, too, had been cut, and she, like Sylvia, had been given a brown overall to wear, with a number on the pocket. She looked almost unrecognizable, like a thin, dark-haired boy. She gave Sylvia a wry grin. The files had assembled round tables in a large, cold, stone-floored room. They stood waiting while 3 or 4 weary, grimy, exhausted-looking children, among whom was Lucy, brought round bowls which proved to contain thin, grey, steaming porridge. It was eaten without milk or sugar. After it, they each had a small chunk of stale bread, with the merest scrape of dripping, and that was the end of breakfast. At this moment Mrs. Brisket entered the room, and the whole school stood up. Mrs. Brisket said grace, and then looked sharply round. "Where are the new girls?" she demanded. Bonnie and Sylvia were pushed forward from their places at different tables toward the rear of the room. She scowled at them. "I am told that you left your beds and communicated last night. For that you will both miss your dinners." Who could have heard them? Sylvia wondered. Then she caught sight of the big girl, Alice, who had cut off her hair. On Alice's rather lumpish, stupid face was a smug expression. "Sylvia didn't do a thing. It was I who went to talk to her," Bonnie exclaimed. "Silence, miss! I will not have this insolence. You can miss your tea, too. Perhaps that will teach you respect. Now tasks. Number 98 will work in the laundry. 18, show her what to do. 99, you will be in the kitchen under cook. She will see that you don't give any trouble. There will be an inspection by the education officer this afternoon, so I want you all in the classroom at 2 o'clock sharp. 18 and 98, you must see that the night workers are waked in time." She left the hall, and the children dispersed quickly and silently to their various tasks. Sylvia was held off by a thin, wiry, but quite friendly-looking girl of 15 or so, who whispered that her name was Emma. Don't we do any lessons?" murmured Sylvia. "Hush! We're in the laundry. Hush, wait till we're in the laundry, then we can talk." The laundry was a large external room, stone-floored and bitterly cold, built out of the back of the house. It contained many large zinc wash-tubs, scrubbing boards, and 2 huge iron wringers, and a great mound of coarse calico sheets and house linen waiting to be washed. 8 or 9 other children came with them and set to work doggedly, sorting the linen and filling the tubs at an outside pump, the handle of which creaked so loudly that conversation could be pursued under the cover of its noise. "Don't, whatever you do, let her hear you talking," warned Emma. "We're only allowed to say necessary things to each other." Her obviously referred to Mrs. Brisket. Emma gave Sylvia a tub, a pile of sheets, and a bar of rough yellow soap. "But do the parents allow their children to be made to work like this?" Sylvia asked in bewilderment. "They are all orphans. This is a charity school, and Mrs. Brisket gets some money for running it. But as well, she makes us do all the work and take in outside work, too. We do the washing for half Blastburn. Then, when the education officer comes round, we go into the classroom and pretend to be learning lessons." "Do you like it here?" asked Sylvia, struggling to drag a bunch of heavy dripping cloth out of the cold water. Emma glanced round cautiously, but no one else was very near, and the pump handle was going full blast. Leaning nearer, she whispered, "It's a horrible place, but don't let anyone hear you say so. The school is full of tale-bearers. Everyone is always hungry, and Mrs. Brisket rewards anyone who carries her tail against her, another person. Mrs. Brisket rewards anyone who carries her tail against another person. She gives them a bit of cheese. She has a big laundry basket in her room full of bits of cheese ready to cut up." So that was why Alice had reported on Bonnie's midnight visit. Sylvia herself, who was still just as hungry after breakfast as before it, felt her mouth watering at the thought of those bits of cheese. And there we will pause.